on the strategic and action plan that we'll be talking about today. But much more than that, it's a fun and is so inspiring, such that when we spoke some minutes ago, about 10 minutes ago, I told him, could you please, beyond the presentation you made this morning, tell us a little bit about the story that you always okay. I know it's somebody who has moved from Senegal to the States. As I was reflecting, I said, well, in one word, how can I describe my young man? Yes, a young man. I say, he's a man that lives outside Africa. His body lives outside Africa, but his heart is always in Africa. So with those words, it's just a simple way to describe him. I don't want to tell his story. It's better his own story by himself. Please join me to welcome this illustrious son of the continent in person of Dr. Amadi. Dr. Amadi, please do what you know do best, inspire us and also motivate us as a researcher.
No,
Thank
thank you, my friend Wale. Uh, Olawale and I have been known each other for quite some time, met at a different platform, but our interests really converged when we were working together on the agriculture side. But I'll come back to it later on in a greater detail. But let me maybe he asked me maybe to share a little bit of my journey and story with you. So I'm a native of Mauritania, which is in West Africa. So the name Diop usually conveys Senegal, but I am a Mauritanian native. I have family on both sides. The Senegalese river is a boundary between Mauritania and Senegal. So my hometown happened just to be on the Mauritanian side, but along the Senegalese river, on both sides of the river, is the same community, the Fulanis. So I have half my family live on the other side of Senegal, so I can be Senegalese also. Um, so I was trained as an economist and an agricultural economist. Um, but my journey started. I did my undergrad at the University of Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire. Uh, Graduated with a bachelor degree in economics. Then went back to Mauritania, worked a little bit at a research institute on fisheries management. Then from there, I came to US, where I did also different degrees. I did another degree in agriculture economics. I did a master also in economics. Then I did a PhD in agricultural economics, all at Louisiana State University. Actually, at the time, maybe this can be a story that may inspire you. At the time, people were calling me a professional student because I was grabbing all degrees that were within my reach. Actually, I wasn't done when I finished at LSU. I wanted to do a master I wanted to do also an MBA. And the university told me, no, doc, you have maxed out the number of degrees you can get from the university. You cannot get another one. So then I joined Louisiana State University as a faculty. I worked there for quite some time. I was the research faculty working on different issues. Then I worked at they created a center of excellency looking on marine issues and environmental issues. I worked there also for quite some time. So I was the only economist working with the 12 biology and marine oceanographers together. So you can imagine the frustration I was going through as an economist working with biologists, and sometimes how we can get our ideas and work to converge together. Did a lot of work on post Katrina, like when they had that Hurricane Katrina, looking at the impact of Katrina on on fishermen and the fishing communities. Um, I serve also in the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council, where we were advising basically the U.S. government in terms of public policies. Uh, Most of the fishery management issues before they goes to the Congress, they were basically going through us. I was a member of the socioeconomic panel, so they had about three panels: the socioeconomic panel, the legal panel, and the statistical committee. Then after that, I moved from a university to another one, and I was teaching microeconomics, macroeconomics, and business statistics. And also I was doing a lot of advisory services for students. Benefited from during that journey, benefited from a training program in leadership that was spearheaded by Ambassador James A. Joseph, who used to live in who used to be the U.S. ambassador in South Africa, and he was very close to Mandela. So he realized that after the apartheid, uh, there were a vacuum in terms of leadership. So all of a sudden, blacks inherited basically a whole system, but there were the critical lack of leadership that he observed. So he designed that program and he ran it for 6 years. Then he moved the program back to US, and at the time I was identified maybe as one of few. I was in a cohort of 25 people. I was identified maybe as someone who has a potential in terms of leadership. So I was co-opted. I benefited from a 1 year training in leadership that took me really to distances. So if I have reached where I am now, is maybe a big part was due to basically that training I received on that mentorship leadership while I was teaching at Southern University in US. After a while, I just said to myself, okay, look, you are here in US, you're doing all this great work for this nation, but why don't you go back to Africa and see maybe whether some people can benefit from that experiences? So I resigned, woke up one day, I asked my wife, okay, you want to go for an adventure? She said, oh, sure. So I resigned from the university, came back to Africa, and then I think it took me maybe a week after I arrived to Mauritania to find a job. So I was recruited as a director of research and information systems for the Sub-Regional Fisheries Commission that was based in Senegal. And that commission has 7 member states. So it was Senegal, Mauritania, Guinea, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and Cabo Verde. So I worked there for a few years before I joined the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD. Then when I was at NEPAD, after 1 year, I was promoted. I entered there through the lens of fisheries. But after 1 year, because of the results that I was getting, I was promoted as a chair as the head of the program. They call Natural Resource Governance, Food Security and Nutrition. So with a very, very big portfolio, basically, where I was looking at issues, where under the portfolio I have about, I think, 15 or 16 different projects and I was supervising about 30 people. So I got a very good experience while working at NEPAD. That's how basically CAADP was one of the portfolio that was under my uh, my supervision. Worked with the great people actually in that division. I had a lot of also support from the management, the director, the CEO, so of Auda Nepad. Really, they gave me a space also to grow, and then to do some significant work for the continent. So after COVID, I retired from Auda, went back to the state, but I still kept on being involved into the program. So I was recruited to coordinate what we call the post-Malabo process. Uh, that led to the new declaration and the new strategic and action plan. A very, very consultative process, very inclusive process that we put together that gave us really a great work that we are now trying to. I mean, we just started implementing starting on January this year. But the innovation we had designing this new policy came from the fact that over the last the what we call the Kampala the Malabo Declaration was supposed to end at the end of 2025, but we have the new declaration at the beginning of 2025, and it was done deliberately for one reason. We wanted to take time during the 2025 during the year 2025 to develop all the instruments that will help a member state to implement. And I will come back to it into the presentation. So basically, this is in a nutshell my journey. Currently, over the last 4 or 5 years, I have established myself as a consultant. I do a lot of consulting for. I did a lot of consulting for the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the FAO, different countries, supported countries in terms of design of their policies. Uh, just currently, I'm finishing up drafting the strategy on blue economy for Guinea. I did the fishery management plan of Mauritania. I do a lot of also. I did some coordination work for APD. I do a lot of work for GIZ. So anyway, and the list goes on and on. So let me just stop here now. And maybe if you guys have any question on my background, I will be glad to address it. But I think for the interest of time, maybe let me ask Wally if it's okay that I can, as that we can start maybe with the presentation, and then maybe after that we go for a Q&A. Wally?
Yeah, please, that's okay. Let's continue now with the formal presentation. We already
Okay.
started. Thank
Okay.
you.
Let me share my screen just quickly. So today what I would like to do is to maybe walk you through what we call the CAADP strategic and action plan. Uh, so we have gone through 3 decades of agriculture transformation in the continent. Um, so this is the third iteration. We just started now. So what I would like to do is to provide you with a brief history of what CAADP is, what it stands for. So the first, the acronym stands for Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program. So I will tell you a little bit about what is the current strategy and action plan, what are the priorities, what was the key political process toward basically what we call Kampala. So when we hear Kampala, uh, when you hear Kampala, Kampala means that the head of sales summit was organized in Kampala, and that's where the strategy was endorsed. Okay, so you will hear in the presentation the Maputo Declaration, the Malabo Declaration, and the Kampala Declaration, and all those means in a nutshell that the meeting that where the head of state came together and adopted the declaration was in those cities. So that's why you have those cities that basically differentiate the different policies. So let me give you a brief history of CAADP. So first of all, CAADP is one of the flagship of the Agenda 2063. So African Union has this vision on what need to be done over the next 30 years, no, over a period of 50 years. And this vision was designed during the time period where Madame Zuma was a chair of the African Union. So that vision is encapsulated in what we call Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. So that vision now is being implemented through a 10-year successive strategies and action plan. So the vision, that document now has what we call strategic flagship programs, and CAADP is one of them. So when you want to look at agriculture transformation in the continent through that Agenda 2063, you are looking at what we call the CAADP. Okay, so CAADP had gone through different phases. So the first phase started in 2003. African countries believe that if you want to feed our people and to transform the continent, you can use an agriculture-led transformation process. So for us to be able to meet our commitment in terms of food security, there were two things that we needed to do at the time. Number one, we need to be able to grow our production and productivity, agriculture production and productivity at a rate of 6% per year. But for this to happen, we needed to allocate some public expenditure into agriculture transformation. And at the time, the available studies were saying that, okay, if governments can allocate 10% of their public expenditure into agriculture, this lead to the growth of agriculture by 6% per annum. So so the country came up with a declaration that was endorsed during a meeting that was held in Maputo, and the declaration carried the name of Maputo CAADP Kampala CAADP Maputo Declaration. Okay, so that basically declaration was implemented over a period of 10 years. Then at the end of the 10 years, the continent took stock and try to see now what has worked, what has not worked, and what should be done differently. So there were a lot of lessons that were learned. But through that process, what the country did is really to strengthen what they call their planning systems. So so the implementation was done through what we call national agriculture investment plans or regional agriculture investment plans. So countries were implementing, but there were some of the coordination was done by the regional economic communities like ECOWAS, for example, or SADC in the East Africa, or no SADC in Southern Africa, or ECAS in Central Africa. So we have about eight regional economic communities in the continent, and they were basically coordinating some of the work that was done at the regional level. And country also were doing their own jobs at the national level. Then at the end of the first cycle, which was the 10 years, the countries again met based on the lesson they learned from the previous cycle. They realized that agriculture is a multi-sectoral sector. So then they expanded basically the scope of the policy in the new declaration that they call the Malabo Declaration that was endorsed in 2014 in Malabo. So, but by expanding the scope, now instead of just looking at two commitment like the 10% budget allocation and the 6% production growth so they basically recommitted to those two commitment, but they ended also issue of ending hunger, malnutrition, halving poverty, boosting inter-African regional trade, uh, having a resilience system, but also they agree to be held accountable in terms of the commitment they're making. So in a nutshell, basically, if I can summarize basically Malabo, I can say it in layman terms that okay, they said, okay, we need to eat, but for us to eat, we need to produce, which is the production productivity. The eating is a food security one. Okay. But for us to be able to produce, we need to invest. So that's where the investment financing came in. Now, once we meet the target of producing and eating, whatever we have left, we can trade it, and that's when the issue of boosting international trade. But we agreed that this is a system for this whole thing to hold. It has to be sustainable over the long run. That's the issue of resilience. But here, when they were looking at the resilience, they were just looking at the resilience to climate issues. But I'll come to it later on in the next cycle. And then, but they said we need to be held accountable. But for that accountability, there is a report that is being produced once every 2 years. It's called the biennial review report, where basically there is a tracking of the commitment made by the countries and how they are implementing it. And there is a scorecard that is coming from that BR that tell also basically how countries have performed based on those indicators, whether they are on the path to meet the trajectory, to meet their targets, and also what the region also are doing. So it gives like a very, very nice story. But the challenge is that if you do the accountability mechanism and then you say, okay, I am not doing well because I didn't invest enough into, let's say, the seed system. There were not a learning loop where country were learning from those experiences and correcting what they needed to correct. Anyway, this was the two first cycles. So that cycle ended up in 2025. Now, what did they learn from the two first cycle? So the learning was that CAADP has helped to raise agriculture significance and profile, both at the national level and at the regional level, and into also at the continental level. So at the end of the two cycles, more than 45 countries out of the 55 African Union countries, member state. So when you talk about Africa, based on the UN definition, we have 54 countries, but based on African Union definition, we have 55 because African Union definition include the Western Arab Sahrawi Democratic Republic, which the UN doesn't recognize. So that's why sometimes you see in the literature 54 country in the African Union document, you see 55 countries. So um, so about 45 out of the 55 countries have adopted the CAADP process. More than 30, about 38 have gone through some of the, basically there is there is a CAADP agenda, they have adopted it, but there is also a process that you go through. So about 38 have gone through the whole some of the part of the process and completed it. But one of the element of the process also is to hold what we call business meetings, and then complete. When you complete the whole process, only about 28 countries have completed the process. So because they have completed the process, they were able to leverage basically the fact that they have completed the process, and they have gone to institutions like the GAFSP, which is anchored within the World Bank, and they have received funding to implement those projects. So that's also the process you have to go through. Now, in terms of investment, so because of the process that has been done that is robust, we have seen an increased investment in agriculture across all African countries. It has not been enough to help meet the targets because the population growth is also is growing so rapidly to the point that the production and productivity is not enough to 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 support basically that population growth, and and that's one of the reasons why at the moment we are spending more than $50 billion per annum to import food, while we should be food secure by this time. So African ownership also and leadership in agriculture development has been strengthened. So, and I told you like it has strengthened because countries now own CAADP, and a lot of them, more than 45, have already embraced the process. Now, so basically, this I have already covered it. More 45 have signed compact. 35 have developed national agriculture investment program. Out of the eight economic community, we have about four of them that have also developed the regional agriculture investment plans and have gone all to the process. But the innovation really is that now we're linking agriculture to economic policies. We're talking about reducing poverty, for example, that because we feel like if you transform the agricultural sector, you can also use that to leverage basically. I mean, if to end hunger, for example, or to reduce poverty, because it's a sector that that generate a lot of jobs. Based at least on some of the published literature, there was some indication that more than 80% of the African labor force lives in the rural area. No, more than 60% live in the rural areas. And out of those 60% of the labor force, 80% are smallholder farmers. So focusing on them, helping them basically to increase their agricultural production productivity, accessing to market will help them to boost their income, and also contribute to poverty reduction. So that's basically the linkage that you can look for. As I indicated also, CAADP has established a robust monitoring and system, which with the binary reviews that I have already spoken about. So I will not basically spend time on it. But some of the binary review issues, because it was a successful process, will be carried over to the next cycle. Now, uh, when we were doing the consultation, for example, for this new policy, I indicated early on that the consultation was very, very, very consultative. So what we did was the following. So we put in place uh, we did first of all regional consultation. So we went into the regions, like in East Africa, we brought like about two regional economic communities or four. I mean, we brought COMESA, EAC, and IGAD together with all their member states, and then we worked with them for almost a week to basically see what are the regional priorities that emerge from that area, and also what are the national priority, and then we confine it into a report. Then we did another consultation in West Africa, and Wale was one of the lead consultants who worked on it. So we brought also all the ECOWAS countries together. Then we did another one in Central Africa, and I think Wale also was involved on that one, where we brought all the country. So basically the idea was to do a bottom-up policy where we take basically needs and priority from countries and see how we can encapsulate them into a continental policy. The second thing we did is to say, okay, well, it's good to talk to people, but also how do we ensure that this is also grounded in evidence? So we put in place about 13 technical working group, thematic technical working groups, some working on investment financing, some looking at production productivity, some even looking at how the new technology like uh, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and all those kind of things can help. Uh, and that group grew like from the African centers of excellences. We had almost all the continental centers of excellences that were involved in terms of drafting those reports that were independently reviewed. So we got a lot of body of knowledge that came from that side. So the third thing we said is that, okay, maybe someone like one of you guys could be a member of those group, but you can feel like, okay, if I go to this technical working group or if I go to this regional consultation, maybe my voice would be muted because maybe I don't have the background that is necessary for my voice to be heard, or I don't have that expertise or that name recognition that will help me to get my view across. So what we did, we opened up the process and we said we will have like what we call some memoranda, and we said whoever in the continent has a say on the policy and want to contribute, this is a canvas that you have to follow and you can submit your views. So we send basically those memo to more than 1,000 people and institution. Actually, we didn't just limit them to Africa. We said globally. We even received like some input from the US government. We received some from the European Union. We received some from the FAO, for example, the like. Because we wanted the process to be so inclusive in such a way that at the end, when we have our policy, we are proud that we have producing a policy that comes from the people, that is grounded in evidence, but also that take into consideration all opinion and views. So that's why if you look at the new CAADP document, it's very comprehensive. So one part of the document is to look at what we call the different challenges. So uh, despite the achievement I just mentioned, CAADP implementation has been slow. Okay, and unfortunately, by the end of the second decade, none of the African country was on track to meet the Malabo Declaration commitment by the end of 2025. So as a result, we're still having 280 million, about 20% of our population that is experiencing hunger. Malnutrition remain a severe one, so I don't want to go into the numbers. We have also a very unfortunate rising cost that have made healthy diet unaffordable for more than almost 925 million. We have a growing rate of obesity and unrelated issue that add to the continent health and economic burden. Um, but looking forward, we saw also some elements that can also help to transform the continent. So one of them is like we have an urbanization and a changing consumption pattern. In many countries now, in Africa, you have a rise in the middle class that is demanding for processed food, for prepared and processed food, and this is due to the issue of urbanization. So the economic growth also are helping to create a middle class with a rising income, an increasing demand for diverse and high quality food product. The population growth, and here I like to quote some of the elements that one of my mentors, Dr. Mayaki, who is the former Prime Minister of Niger and with whom I work very closely these days. He always mentioned the fact that we are 1.2 billion at this stage now. Our population will double in the next 30 years, not 50, not 20, but in the next 30 years, our population is going to double. It took Europe 150 years to double its population. Africa is going to double its population in the next 30 years. So, and the big challenge and the big question we're asking ourselves, and actually Dr. Mike is commissioning a study looking at those issues, is how to feed 2.5 billion, let's say, by 2050, for example. If at this stage now uh, we are 1.xx billion of people, and we're spending between 50 billion and 100 billion dollars basically to import food. What would happen if we have one additional billion mouth to feed? So that's basically the explosion of population growth leading to us will lead definitely to a significant increase in food demand that could be only met with a productivity and efficiency gain. So if we don't focus on really improving our production and productivity, that is going to be a challenge. At the moment, we we congratulate ourselves that we have like, let's say, 30 something kg of fertilizer per hectare. But and also we always say we have 60% of arable land, but having 60% of arable land doesn't mean anything if the soil is not healthy. So you need to have both healthy soil and the arable land to be able to increase production and productivity. So the average, for example, usage of fertilizer per hectare at the global level is about 130 kg. We are about 35, 40 kg per hectare. And our ambition as a continent is to be able to use, let's say, 50 kg per hectare. And this is something that came out of an African Union Head of State Summit that was convened in I think in Kenya in 2024. That came up with a new number. So basically, even ambitiously, we are not ambitious enough in terms of what we need to do in terms of increasing our production and productivity. So climate change will create a lot of social instability, and so. But we realize now, during COVID, that also our supply chain, our logistic were uh, very easily disrupted because of those zoonotic diseases. We realize also that war is a disruptor. So in terms of resilience, instead of looking just at the resilience to climate, now the new policy is looking at all type of resilience, whether they are economic shocks, whether they are related to conflict, whether they are related to health, or whether they are related to climate. So there is a whole range of issue that has captured into that issue, like when you look at the action plan. Now, let's now zero into the new strategy. So one of the interesting things that happened during into this new policy, very significant one, is the following. During the last two iterations of the policy, we just have a blank declaration. So you have a Malabo declaration, you have a Maputo declaration. So once we got the declaration endorsed by the head of state, we didn't have any instrument that was developed in parallel with the policy that will help basically the implementation. So the African Union and the regional economic community spent like almost 2 to 3 years after the declaration to design the different tools and instruments, and also explain to countries what this is. This time, the new innovation is that we have a declaration and we have a strategy and action plan, which we didn't have into the two other iteration, meaning that you have a lot of things into this action plan that help country to have a menu a la carte where they can pick and choose the different issues that are relevant to them. And then there is a way on how to basically implement them because very well captured into this strategy and action plan. So we have two documents. You have the declaration and you have the strategy and action plan before you have just blank declaration. So this is a major innovation in terms of moving forward. The second innovation also we had, which also was a part of the coordination process, was to say, okay, since we had the declaration that was adopted by the head of state at the beginning, the new declaration at the beginning of 2025, yet the previous cycle was ending at the end of the 2025. The African Union leaderships decided that, okay, we'll spend 2025 to develop different instruments to support basically the implementation. So over the last year, we developed what we call the CAADP implementation guidelines. We developed a CAADP implementation modalities. We developed the CAADP implementation checklist. Then we developed the results framework, and now we finalizing also what we call the indicators. And then also we decided that, okay, instead of being very granular in terms of the indicator that you will be monitoring, we will just monitor the indicator at the target level. So the new strategy has 6 commitment, but translated into strategic objective. It has 22 target and it has 48 intervention areas. I will come back, I will now cover them one by one as we move forward in the next few coming slide. So I went through this. So the process was very consultative, as I indicated. We had the 5 regional dialogues that were led by the regional economic communities. We have a technical roundtable and key stakeholders that just organized themselves and submitted the memorandums as I indicated. Like we had the youth, we have the parliamentarian, we have so many constituencies. We even have some farmers who were connecting to some of the dialogues into rural areas where they were all sitting into a room and they have someone who was translating the different discussions into Swahili, for example. We did also some targeted basically consultation with a certain constituencies like the non-state actors, the private sector, some stakeholder group. We did the independent memoranda that is explained. Uh, we worked with a 13 technical working group, and then we went on a retreat. So first of all, we had a continental meeting where all this was presented and validated. Then we took now that those documents and we went into a retreat and we drafted the documents that I mentioned, like the strategy and the declaration. Then after we drafted it, also we went into another validation cycle. Once it was validated, now we put it into the African Union processes, which is and the process goes this way. So you have what we call the Specialized Technical Committee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water, and Blue Economy. They call it the STC. And the STC has two components. You have a meeting of expert, and then you have the meeting of the Minister of Agriculture. So they looked at the document. They very very complicated process. Then after that they cleared it. Then now they put together what they call a resolution to be submitted to the head of state for adoption. So then through that process, like usually between the two meetings, you have few months. So during that month, the document was presented also to what we call the permanent, the PRC, which is the ambassador accredited to Addis. So they looked at the document, they gave their feedback. Then it went to the head of state in January 2025 in Kampala. That's where it was adopted. So now, what is specific and different into this new one? So the new strategic went from an agriculture-centric lens to an agri-food system approach. So we're saying now agriculture is not just the purview of the agricultural ministry, but you have so many things that are involved in agriculture now. You have the Ministry of Health, you have the Ministry of Environment, you have the Ministry of Finance, you have the Ministry of Planning, and then some other ministries that I don't that I probably be missing. But it's a very very broader concept than just agriculture. So it calls now for a multi-sectoral coordination, increase investment and adoption of innovative practices, because I mentioned to you that we will be looking at now at precision agriculture, AI, etc., etc. But the nuts and bolt is that the new policy objective is to achieve what they call sustainable, resilient, and inclusive agri-food system transformation that will diversify our economies, that will create jobs of a million of local jobs, raise income, build social cohesion, and improve socio-economic stability. It's a very, very big ambition, broad ambition that we set for ourselves for the next coming 10 years. So it has six what we call strategic objectives. Objective number one, focus on intensifying sustainable food production, push for agro-industrialization, which has been the missing middle in terms of agro-processing and boost trade. The second one is looking at the investment financing and how those investment financing can support basically the transformation of agri-food system. The third one is an issue of food security across the continent, nutrition and food security, not just food security. But another component that is really innovative in this new one is a issue of inclusivity and equitable livelihood. Before, we say, okay, the issue of youth, the issue of gender, the issue of livelihood are cross-cutting. But because they are cross-cutting, they are watered down and somewhere they are forgotten. But Africa is saying now, okay, we have a very, very young population. We need to create labor-intensive job, and we have to be intentional about it. And for us to be intentional about it, we need to have it as a strategic objective. That is a independent strategic objective that is not called cost-cutting. And here there are some specific targets. For example, access to land, you need to dedicate at least 30% of the land to youth, for example. Before, if you say access to land, there were no specific target on it. But for the inclusivity now to play its role, there was specific target for those basically gender type of issue. Then there is an issue of agri resilience, and I indicated the previous cycles were focusing just on climate-related resilience issue. Now we're saying no. COVID has opened up our eyes. The Ukraine war has opened up our eyes because when we had the Ukraine war, there were a lot of challenges to access to wheat for many countries that depend on wheat, like Egypt, like Sudan, and many of those countries were receiving their wheat from Russia and from Ukraine. Most of our fertilizers also were coming from that area. So automatically it has started impacting some of our production productivity. And probably some of you may remember those pictures where Macky Sall was meeting with Putin and asking for support. That infuriated many people in the continent. Um, but uh, but those were the reality at the time. So now we're saying that when we talk about resilience agri-food system, we're talking about resilience to all kind of shocks, whether they are climate related, whether they are health related like COVID, whether they are conflict related like the Ukraine war, or whether they are linked to economic shocks like now. Just look at the current war, the Gulf War, and you look at the fuel price now. I'm sure those fuel prices also will impact agriculture. The studies, the people have not done those studies yet, but I'm sure you will see a lot of studies where you will see the impact of the war on agriculture production and productivity. So the sixth one now is a governance issue. Also here we are very intentional about it, but I'll come back into detail on all these six commitments. So basically, as I was indicating, those six strategies, so the new policy has those six strategic objectives that I have already mentioned. It has 22 targets. And the reason why it has 22 targets is like if you look at the first one where we talk about sustainable food production, uh, you have food production, you have agro-industrialization on the first one, and then you have trade. So if you want to have a target, you need to have at least three targets within that objective. And that's the reason why you have six targets, you have 22 objectives, because each objective like has few little component inside. So the exact, basically, if you look at the second one, you're talking about investment and finance. You're looking at the third one, you're looking at food and nutrition security. So each of them has maybe two or three issues and if you unpack them, that's how you come up with the 22 targets. But in each target also you have different intervention areas. So those intervention areas amount to 48. But if you go into the level of activities now, you have almost 240 or 300 something that has been identified into the action plan. I'm not going to go into the detail on it. But the first objective uh, is looking at how can we strengthen our input system, whether it's seed, whether it's fertilizer, whether even it's advisory services, whether it's access to land, whether it's access. How can we strengthen them? So there is a lot of things in the action plan that impact this issue, and within each of them now tell you what kind of things that you need to be doing. How do we stimulate growth and competitiveness and sustainability? And this speaks like about the agro-industrialization. How do we invest into the into regional value chain? This also speaks about basically agro-industrialization and what are the roles of the different RECs. How do we improve trade facilitation policies, infrastructure and services? So we go into a great level of detail into what need to be done. We have now we say these are the key intervention. If you do this intervention, this could be the intermediate outcomes. But we went even to the level of outcome, final outcome. So there is a whole theory of change that is in the document. So probably maybe Wale can share it with you because public document you can find it online. The second strategic objective was on investment, but the challenge we had in the past two cycles was the following. Number one, we said country have to dedicate 10% of their public expenditure to agriculture. But we realized that there was a challenge there. So you will see, for example, in some country, ministries, they will take basically their operational budget and basically account it as a investment agriculture. So if a ministry buy cars for the minister or uh, buy equipment, that is not really an investment into what we call the production and productivity that will advance the issue. So there is an issue of the quality of the investment, but because when we say quality of investment, we're looking at some investment, let's say into seed system, into warehouse receipt, into post-harvest infrastructure, into rural road, into feeder road, etc., etc. Those are kind of things that we were looking at for the issue of transformation. So the investment quality was a big challenge into the two first cycles. So now we want to rectify it into the second. So here the way they rectify it is to say, okay, uh, we want country to allocate 10% of their public expenditure to agriculture, but we want also country to reinvest into the sector 15% of basically the tertiary GDP, meaning that the wealth generated through the agriculture. So at least 15% of it has to be reinvested. And so this will help basically address the issue of quality. But also the second thing that we have, what the new policy is doing, is to say we are not just limiting ourselves to public expenditure. We're looking at any type of investment. So there is a target into the new policy of raising about $100 billion over the next 10 years and to be reinvested through basically from the private sector into the so basically there is an issue of the design to how to redesign a fit for purpose financial architecture and also how to strengthen the different facilities that support the development of bankable flagship program. And that's the reason why into the new policy, we talk about bankable issue. So it's another conversation maybe for another time. Maybe I can come back another time and we can walk you through the guidelines that will show you really what all these things means in reality in terms of implementation. Here also we have some intermediate outcomes that has been identified in the document. So they are completely linked to basically the key intervention area. How do we increase public and private investment? How to have a wider availability of diverse and innovative financial products? How can those products help enhance productivity and also strengthen financial institutions? The third one is looking at nutrition. So here there is a deliberate focus on how we can increase sustainably agriculture practices for enhanced production. But also here we're looking also about biodiversity because in the past we were just talking about crops and productivity, but also here we're also looking not only at production and productivity also, but how to maintain the biodiversity, how to exploit agriculture to improve nutrition. Here also we brought the issue of health but also the issue of One Health because we have a lot of issues that deal with livestock. Before, when we speak about CAADP, people have a tendency to think about crops. But nowadays, but with the new one, there is a deliberate really focus not only on crops. Although the other one also were there in the previous cycle, but they were not just they didn't just have like the 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 dominance that I mean the relevance that was put on them into this new policy. So the new policy now not only look at crops, but they looked at fisheries and aquaculture issue, and also it looks at also One Health, no livestock. So all those issue of fisheries, livestock. Are looked, I mean, are couched within this strategic objective. Then you have also the issue of standards and the One Health protocol and all those kind of things also are linked to some of the issues that we have observed in terms of zoonotic diseases that have created some issue in terms of COVID and that have impacted our production and productivity. So here also likewise like the other one, there is a linkage between those key intervention and also the intermediate outcome. But if you go into the document, as I indicated, it goes all to the chain to the final impacts. Okay. So the as I was indicating, so here we said inclusivity should not be just cross-cutting, but we have to be deliberate. How can we advance inclusivity and livelihood? So here there were a lot of also intervention on how to improve access to productive resources for youth, for women, and also what you call marginalized people. There were a lot of discussion whether we use marginalized or something. So while I don't remember even the word that we use there, whether we use at the end marginalized or a different word. But anyway, there were like a lot of tension when we were doing this in terms of what kind of word we can use to address also people who are not let's say who are handicapped or who have some other challenges. So there is also a lot of discussion. I mean, there were also a lot of things that have been put into prioritizing social protection. How do we put in place social protection program? How do we promote like digitalization and agri-tech? How to improve market access and integration for all these groups like women, for like youth or the marginalized people. And there are some specific targets that have been captured in the document in terms of making sure that this is going to happen. Okay. Then the fifth one is on to how to build basically resilient agri-food system that can withstand and adapt to various shocks. As I indicated, and I repeated many times that in the previous cycles, when we talk about shock, it was just shocks to climate issue. But now we're talking about all kind of shock, whether they are economic, whether they are health related, whether they are climate related, or whether they are environmental related. So all kind of things have been here. So now the issue is like how do we strengthen the institutional infrastructure to address those shocks? How do we institute and strengthen the program that build basically livelihood for resilience? So this also is unpacked into the document. You can basically look at it maybe when you have time. So the last one, now we're saying that for all these things to happen, we need to have a robust governance mechanism that will help us to basically make this program work. So to those so that's why basically we're talking about leadership and ownership. How do we integrate Kampala declaration into national and regional development plans? And I will tell you here maybe a story. In some countries, and I don't know whether it has changed. For example, a country like Ghana, when a president is elected, the first year, the country is basically developing the plan or the program of the president. Okay, so once that program is developed now, the following years they're implementing them. They're implementing the program. So if you miss that timing, okay, to come and help the country to redraft, let's say, for example, the National Agriculture Investment Program. Uh, you miss, then the program is not going to be anchored within the new program of the president. And if it's not anchored within the program, it has some implication in terms of budget allocation. So, and if country don't allocate resources to it, the likelihood that you get those 10% public expenditure will be will be basically at risk. Okay, so that's why in terms of governance, we have to ensure that countries are prioritizing what they put there when they develop their planning, and that plan has to be anchored within the budget cycle. So the issue of how do we mobilize resources has been coming again and again, how to streamline the non-state actors. So anyway, in terms of leadership ownership, there are a lot of things that need to be done that fit within this objective. The second one is the policy and governance coherence, how to streamline the policy across different sectors and levels. As I indicated, now we're talking about agri-food system. You have different ministries that are involved. How do you create like interministerial coordination? Where does that coordination sit? If you go to a country like Rwanda, it's very decentralized. It's not even coordinated by the Ministry of Agriculture, but it's coordinated by the Ministry of Planning. If you go to a country like Zambia, the coordination mechanism is sitting within the office of the Vice President. Uh, and if you go to some other countries, you can find scenarios that goes between highly decentralized to highly centralized process. So basically, those are the issues that this governance issue has to to address. The last one is the issue of evidence-based decision making. How do we establish a robust agri-food system, knowledge system? How do we promote the mutual accountabilities that I mentioned? There are a lot of lessons learned. Actually, Wale is one of the experts who works regularly on the biennial review process. He's always invited to those meetings and he contribute to supporting them, and also he works also with ECOWAS and on the process of creating that evidence-based decision making. So all those issues goes into the governance system. Uh, Now, these conclude basically the strategic objective. Now, the other challenge that also the document addresses is the issue of how do we strengthen implementation and coordination. uh, how do we strengthen institutional and human capacity at all levels? In the first cycle, like Maputo, the donors created what they call a pooled fund, and they used to call it the MTDF, the multi-donor MDTF, multi-donor trust fund. So the trust fund was funding capacity for coordination. So there were a big unit based at the African Union, where a lot of experts were hired to sit within the African Union to provide support to African countries, and then also some experts were also hired within the regional economic communities, and they were all working in tandem. So if a country want to, let's say, to develop its national agriculture investment plan, and you don't have the capacity, so those people were going along a pool of experts to those countries to support them with the designing their analytics, putting the coordination mechanism, drafting the documents, going through the whole process that I mentioned earlier. But when the first cycle ended, the MDTF also ended. And once that MTDF ended, we had an erosion of capacity within the AU institution because all those guys who were paid through that fund were let go. And it was a big challenge during the Malabo era, where the capacity has eroded and we didn't have enough capacity to accompany country to do this. So now for this cycle, this issue has really to be addressed at the highest level. The issue of coordination and collaboration among implementing entities. So CAADP is not just a purview now of the Ministry of Agriculture, but also the Ministry of Finance and Budgeting has something. If you go, for example, to Senegal at the time, you look at, for example, the area of food and nutrition security. You have 12 line ministry at the time that have budget lines that were basically addressing some one form or another of the nutrition issue of Senegal. And it was a nightmare to coordinate this whole thing. So what the Senegalese government did is to create like a unit within the ministry, within the office of the prime minister, to basically be able to convene all those groups and be able to steer it. And that's one of the successes that helped Senegal basically to address its issue on food security. So how to enhance resource mobilization and financial stability is an issue. A lot of countries have nice documents, but when it comes to implementation, they have a systemic lack of resources to support the implementation. So those are the issues also that the document is addressing that the continent also need to prioritize. So in terms of funding, so there were like a lot of issues that were looked at. So how to strengthen that public funding that I mentioned, how to create a special fund for AU institution, which is the pool fund that I mentioned that eroded, and how can we bring something similar back? How to leverage also the donor funding for capacity building. But uh, excuse me, let me just I have a call here that I need to. Uh, Let me just say that in a meeting, Okay, we'll call back. Okay, sorry about this. So, so the issue of private sector engagement. Now we're looking about private sector engagement, funding from all domains, and that's the reason why we have a target of mobilizing 100 billion over the next 10 years. And also how to incorporate green financing. There is a lot of things on green financing. You remember COP28 in Dubai. Uh, Before when we talk about before we were looking agriculture and climate issue as in silo. So you have the climate meeting that happened, people make a lot of commitment. Then you have the agriculture meeting that happened, people make a lot of commitment. But in Dubai, they try to bring the two together. So there were a declaration in Dubai on climate and food security, where the two are coming now together. So there was a lot of green financing for direct investment and support into the financing of CSA, which is the climate smart agriculture that exists now. And then basically, how can we tap into it? The challenge is like all those funds exist, but a lot of countries don't have the capacity or the know-how on how to tap into those funds. So I think maybe, okay, what am I doing here? Okay, so there are also a lot of issue or knowledge system, how to strengthen our M&E framework, how to do the reporting, how to deploy a certain capacity at the content, how to improve communication advocacy. But these are standard, they were also in the previous reviews, basically, from, into the new one. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. So the CAADP knowledge system also has been is an issue. Now we are working on updating and aligning the progress monitoring indicator with the new CAADP strategy. Actually, not this week, but not the week starting in 2 days, but the following week, there is a meeting convened by the African Union in Windhoek, Namibia, where they'll be discussing about those indicators and then now finalizing them so that country also can start looking at them in terms of reporting. There is also we are looking also about how to build the capacity to produce like the monitoring report, which is the binary review report, and how to now track before we were talking about the National Agricultural Investment Plan, but now we are talking about the National Agri-Food Systems, because now we moved from agriculture-centric to agri-food-centric lens. So there is an issue of how we track National Agricultural Food Investment Plan and the regional also agri-food investment plan, and provide data for decision making, because on the news cycle the continent is putting a lot of emphasis on how I call it, on the learning component. So you go through the process, you do your binary review, you realize that okay, you have gap here, gap here, gap here. Now the new one want to say, okay, now it's an opportunity for you to go back through the cycle and fix those gaps. If you have some shortcoming in terms of seed system, can you mobilize resources to put in place some seed system, for example? If you have some issue in terms of let's say of access to water, can you do some reform to make sure that you don't have conflicts related to water, etc., etc. So the issue of communication advocacy, I have already touched on it. So uh, when we did this presentation, we were looking at the key political processes toward Kampala. So the processes now was to take it to the Specialized Technical Committee in 2024, take it to the permanent, which is ambassador accredited to Addis to do a certain type of work, then go to the AU summit, which was held 9 to 11 January 2025 to Kampala to get the declaration and action plan adopted by the member state. Then spend the whole 2025 to develop some tools and instruments for implementation, and those include the drafting of the Kampala guidelines. We did a meeting in Nairobi in October. Then we have the STC that met, and then we had some dissemination meeting in 2026, and then we had the results framework that is being developed. So all these kind of things are happening this year. So that also, maybe let me just touch one slide on this issue, and then I promise I'll conclude. So now, in terms of the guidelines for implementation, to translate basically this big document and all those things that I mentioned into something that country can implement. So we decided to look at to help countries now implement, going through 4 phases. The phase number one is to first of all say, okay, this document is official. My president has endorsed it. I should have, let's say, a cabinet memo to give instruction to all my ministers, and that, okay, this is now our new guidelines in terms of policy. How can we adapt what we're doing to this? So the first one is to promote a shared vision and set the agenda at the country level through what we call the governance. So create the governance mechanism at the national level to be able to do it. The second phase will be to do what we call the analytics. The analytics have 3 components. So you do a baseline study to assess where you are in terms of agriculture policy and agricultural transformation. Then based on that baseline study, you look at where your gaps are. So the gap will help you to identify what are your goals. So you have a report that you produce that called the goal and milestone report, GMR. The third issue would be now to look at now those goals and milestones and prioritize them. So then you have a third report that is created. It's called the PPO, the program and project opportunities. So it tells you like where your opportunity lies, what you should prioritize. Now, once you have that, once you set up that governance mechanism, you do your analytics. The third phase now would be to develop your investment program. Before, the National Agriculture Investment Program they were like they looked like a wish list. Now, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they were not enticing, basically attracting private sector investment. Now we're saying, no, based on your priorities, you need to identify maybe like, let's say, 3 to 5 bankable programs. And you convert them into projects, and you design them like a project with a goal, milestone, with a return on investment, so that they can be attractive to the private sector. So that's basically what you do into that investment design, planning, and execution readiness. Then once you do that, you convene your business meeting, and then you are ready now for implementation. If then now the last one will be on mutual accountability, where you have now the system that help you to track whether those investments are bearing fruits, and also they are helping you to meet your targets and your goal in terms of what has been assigned into Kampala. And then wherever it's not working, you can also, because learn from it and then go back to the cycle. That's why you have like that wheel that is going on. So there are a bunch of documents that we have developed. Actually, you guys got very fortunate, because I was supposed to fly either yesterday evening or this morning to Yaoundé to go to a meeting where we presenting this to the member state. But unfortunately, somehow I had some issue with the ticketing, and that's the reason why I'm here talking to you guys. So maybe it's a blessing for in disguise that I was not able to travel, so that we can have this meeting. So this end my presentation, but maybe I think Wale told me that many of you are doing some research. There are a lot of issue into what I have presented that warrant maybe more question in terms of research. How do we connect? For example, there is a lot of knowledge that is coming out there in terms of improved seeds, for example. Uh, what kind of seed should we plant? I mean, on the ecological side and on the physical side, there are a lot of research that could be done there. There are a lot of questions that we're asking ourselves that may warrant answer. On the finance side, what are the kind of innovative financing mechanism we can put in place to attract more private sector investment is also a big headache for the continent. How do we get our system to be resilient? Is also another area where so you can focus on. So anyway, there are a lot of questions of research that can benefit the continent. How to feed 2.5 billion people in the next 10 years, I think for me is one of the biggest in terms of doing prospective analysis and prospective studies. So let me stop here and hand over maybe the mic back to Wale, and he can guide us for the next issue. Over to you, Wale. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. The one I call boss. I now understand when I said Ahmad is my boss. It's not just in mouth or words of mouth, it's in real action, right? Again, I want to thank you for doing what you know to do best, supporting the continent where you started. And you said at a point you are, and yes, thank you again for all you do.
Welcome.
Right. Do you have anyone who would like to ask a question or you want to know something from what you have presented? And how you can join this move to be part of those who are counted for progress in the continent. You may want to, you can raise your hand. I will call you, or you can also use the chat box to put your question. There are a lot of things already in the chats. I don't know whether we can start from there. Matthew said, good afternoon, Doctor. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. I have a question. Okay, go ahead. Given the situation of war in Iran, and bear in mind that most African nations depend on fuel from East countries whose supply may hurt people. At the moment, how can the African countries handle this so that food and agricultural activities can sustain? That reminds me of the ongoing war in the Ukraine, Russia, and now we have the Middle East added to it. Do you think this will affect this vision? I will say this is building a resilient and sustainable food system in Africa. That's the vision of Kampala. We never envisaged war anyway. So how do you think that this can further step us back as a nation? Would you like to take that, or you take more? Please?
No, I think in my view there are a lot of questions that are on the chat that we can take. For example, how the Ukraine war is impacting. I mean, how the war in Iran and bearing in mind that many depend on fuel. I think that question is uh, I mean, what happening in Iran is not different to what happened to Ukraine. With Ukraine, the challenge we had is like over there. There were two key things that we were getting from that region. We were getting our wheat, we were getting oilseed, and we were getting fertilizer. So that was very clear. As soon as we have the war that year, many African countries were struggling to find access to fertilizer, access to wheat, and access to. So that's why now there are a lot of discussions, and that's maybe one of the reasons even that we have that summit that looked at soil health and fertilizer because they wanted to make sure that we will not depend on more than 30% of our 40% of our fertilizer use was coming from those regions. So I'm assuming also the issue of what's happening in Middle East will also be the same as the one. So that's why we have a strategic objective on resilience, and we're not talking just about resilience to climate issue, because before, when you talk about resilience to climate, you're talking about flood and all those kind of things, or drought, etc. But now we're talking about all kind of shocks. So I'm sure I mean, the policy now, the way it is designed, if it is implemented, it may address some of those issues. It goes even far to the point that it is talking about strategic reserves. For example, if you look at here in this country, US, they have what they call strategic reserve. Uh, and I think they will activate them because of the war in Ukraine. They want to maintain the gas price at a lower level. For example, when the price of oil goes down, very down, US buy a lot and then they put them into they stockpile them into ground. And then when you have a challenge like this war, they can go take that thing and sell it here for 1 year. They can be independent and it won't affect them. That's why they can go to these kind of things. So if you go to ECOWAS, they have like grain strategic reserves, for example. And then when you have drought and they feel like the production and productivity will not be enough, so they can pour some, they can basically activate those reserves and be able to not be subject to those fluctuations in availability of food. So the Middle East crisis is going definitely to have an impact. It's too early to tell now because it's ongoing, but I can guarantee you that it will impact somehow our production, productivity, and food in the coming month or years. So I think that's what I can give as an answer. So there is a very interesting question on what measure have been taken in the Kampala Declaration to ensure that population growth is taken into account and doesn't hinder the achievement of these ambitions. So I think population growth is a different beast that is not being taken into consideration into Kampala, that is focusing just on agriculture. But we are mindful that for us to feed our people, our production and productivity has to grow more and faster than the population. So that's why this decade is not about just increasing production productivity, but it's accelerating the process on how this is made, at least in the Agenda 2060 second 10-year implementation. We're talking about acceleration, not just the production and productivity. So for these two to be going in tandem, most of the policies are talking really about accelerating production and productivity to a level where it can catch up with the population growth. I think that's the answer I can give to this second question. There is an interesting political economy question from Maurice. Uh, so he is saying that he's asking, what is the political economy foundation of CAADP? Is it a predatory capitalism or an African socialism? So I'm not sure whether I can say it's a predatory capitalism or African capitalism. For me, it's a policy that is designed by the African Union to increase our production productivity. Remember one thing. Um, about maybe about 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, anyway, when I joined the African Union, I was asking myself, when we talk about agriculture transformation, what does it mean? Uh, so I started looking at the literature on it. So, and I realized that there is this professor called C.P. Timer. I don't know whether it's pronounced Timer or Timer. Uh, he basically produced like a seminal paper looking at agriculture transformation, and he indicated that agriculture, when we talk about agriculture transformation, we have to go through 4 phases. So number one, you increase your production and productivity. Okay, so that's the first stage of the journey to agriculture transformation. So number two, you are able to feed people from that production productivity. Number three, you're generating resources uh, uh, that are being reinvested into other sectors. Let's say, for example, you're generating enough resources in the ag sector that now those resources are being reinvested into education, into health, into rural infrastructure, etc., etc. And number five, now agriculture become number four, agriculture become now the sector that is pulling the country upward. So in terms of policy, because you made those investment to agriculture, agriculture now become the engine. And when we talk about that country, we say, oh, this is an agricultural led country. In some other country, you have the mining sector that is pulling the country up. So when you have that now, that's when you start looking at transformation. So I cannot now, based on that approach and processes, dichotomize that the transformation is a capitalistic, predatory capitalistic, or African socialism. I just know that the country has put in place an engine of growth that is pulling the country upward. But whether it's a capital intensive or social intensive is another debate for another platform, maybe. Um, so the issue of youth employment into the agriculture is a very, very big one. Uh, I looked at, I think in my previous, I think when I was at NEPAT, I started looking at the different kind of what I call the structure of farming. For example, if you go to the Southeast Asia, and I was privileged to visit that region, so you barely see someone farming in a more than a hectare plot of land. So, but that hectare of land has a very high yield. For example, if you go to Indonesia, you see someone farming into 1 hectare of land, let's say farming rice. The the government used to have 2 cycle of harvest a year. Okay. Now they are doing 4 cycle of harvest a year because they have developed some new breeds that are demanding less water and that are growing at a faster rate. Okay, so they intensify the production and productivity, working with a small farmer with the small plots. You go to Latin America. Uh, the way they intensify their production and productivity is to work with the big farms. Okay, they don't have a lot of smallholder farmers coexisting with the large farm. They have, if you go to Argentina and even part of Brazil, you have mega farms working on different issues. In our continent, uh, we in the policy we are not very deliberate in terms of do we adopt basically the intensification to mechanization that you have in Latin America, or do we have to adopt the intensification that is also labor intensive that you have in Southeast Asia? In my view, in the continent, we can have like a model that combine both. Okay, so because if you go to South Africa, they have mega farm in South Africa, for example. But you have also a lot of people who live in the rural area. As I indicated earlier, you have 60% of our rural workforce that live in the rural area, and 80% are smallholder farmers. So if we have to industrialize, we need to create what I call labor-intensive positions. And if for you to create labor-intensive job, you need to address the issue of youth. You have a very young population. Some people are saying on the chat that, oh, some people see agriculture as not being sexy. But farmers are being organized. You know, if you look in the region, you have what we call the PAFO, which is a Pan-African Farmers Organization that has now that is headquarters in Kigali. Before they did not have like an apex region. So you have SACAO, which is a Southern Agricultural Basic Farmers Organization. They are organized and they have youth group in those area. You have also the EEAF, I think, which is the East African Farmers Federation. You have Ropa that is in Ropa that is in West Africa. And then you have Unmagri that is in the north. So the farmers are organized, and within those organizations you have youth chapters, and then now you have also youth that are organizing themselves. For example, you have Kayak, which is basically a continental organization with the youth groups. And then they are being organized, they organize themselves so that they can also have a voice into the policy debate and the issue, and also how to get into agriculture. So sometimes also you have a lot of things where people are saying, oh, youth are not organized, or the sector is not sexy, but things are happening in the reality. And it's just not being documented, but it's happening. People are organizing themselves and they are being involved into these issues. So I think there is one so there is an issue where we're talking about food crisis, and the pharmaceutical industry now want to look into using natural plant produce. How can it be balanced? I mean, I think all these questions really goes into policy issue. I mean, policy issue, policy prioritization. Um, yes, we have an issue of food demand. We have an issue of production that also have to meet our resources. Now, if the pharmaceutical industry want to look into natural plant, I mean, I think they can do it. Look, we claim that we have 60% of arable land into the planet. We have plenty of areas where you can plant. The challenge is like the soil issue, the quality of the soil, and that has not being addressed. But if we go into agroecology, we start doing like using natural thing to fertilize our soil and improve the quality, we should be able to, these things should be able to coexist. I mean, we should produce both food and also some other kind of non-food consumption. So the issue of youth, I have addressed it already. And I think, oh, there is an issue, there is a question here, very interesting question here on the GMOs. Okay, in terms of policy, this is a very interesting question. You go to countries in the southern part of Africa, like, and I'm using South Africa as an example because I lived there for 7 years or 8 years when I was working for Nepal. It's a country that is already doing GMO. There is no way you can tell them reverse, you cannot do GMOs. Okay. You go to West Africa because of the influence of the French and the European Union. Many people don't talk about GMOs. Even some who have tried to get into GMOs are trying to reverse course. Okay. So what should be a position of an institution like African Union? The position should be simple. If a country want to go GMO, African Union should give them all the guidance, okay, and the safety measures for them to go that route. If a country doesn't want to go there, because the national sovereignty issue is a policy decision, it's a national sovereignty. If another country want to go the other route, you help them also to put all the measures, policies, and the right tool and instrument to go that route. I'll give you an example, but this will come from the fish area. For example, many of you eat tilapia, okay? In Nigeria, they produce a lot of tilapia, by the way. So, uh, world fish took tilapia out of Africa to Indonesia, and then they did some tweaking on the species, and then they brought it back into the continent, and they call it enhanced fish, but it's genetically modified. It's not enhanced fish. I don't know what that. So it's just playing with the language. But the challenge of having that enhanced fish into here is like basically it will temper it, with the gene pool that we have, and it may create something that is different that the original species that we have. So that's basically what the genetically modified things does for us. So now countries have choices. They can say we don't want it. and then they put all the safety measures to prevent it from entering into their countries. Some others say we want it, and they can also put all the safety measure for it to not temper into the gene pool or do some other things. So I think that's basically the adoption. That's the position we should have, because you cannot have at this continental level one size fits all for the GMOs. Now, so now someone asking me, does this organization works in all African countries? If he is talking about African Union, yes. So who the implementation plan be done in Rwanda agri-food system, where we are trying to improve for in Rwanda, over the last, and Wale maybe can complement here, Rwanda has been the top performing countries over the last 10 years, except the last cycle where Morocco came first. So Rwanda is a very, very advanced in terms of how they implement. It's very decentralized. It's a mechanism system. That is, I mean, I cannot go into the detail because it's very lengthy, but they have a very robust and solid program, and then Rwanda is really producing enough to feed the Rwandese. I think in the BR, one of the area they have challenges is maybe the quality of the production, because in terms of nutrition, quality and diet, they have some issue. But in all other areas, because one of the advantage of Rwanda is that they have anchored their policy within their budget cycle. So basically, every year the government, because to prioritize and this anchor within the policy within the budget cycle, there is some public expenditure that is allocated. So Rwanda is one of the countries that maybe uh, meet the target in terms of the 10% allocation to production and productivity growth. So so there were a lot of questions on can we consider that we
Yeah,
have
boss,
achieved?
we should begin to round up now. We have
Yeah,
passed the normal time.
yeah,
Please,
sure.
maybe take one. Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, let me maybe take one more, and then after that, let me see. Okay, let me take maybe the last one. What is CAADP strategy for implementing African free continent trade? So, in the CAADP strategy, the AFCTA, the Continental Free Trade, plays a critical role. The reason why it plays a critical role is that we're talking about regional market and we're talking about regional value chain. So for a regional market and regional value chain to happen, we need to open up basically the borders. And for that to happen, we need to have common standard. We need to look at what they call the SPSs. So all those kind of things are happening now. So one of the issue that maybe I want to focus on with the regional market. So when we finish AFCTA, we said country have three options. They have to identify, no, they have three things that they need to work on. Number one, they need to identify commodities for which we can face the tariff now. They can identify a second category of commodities where tariffs are phased over a period of 10 years. And then we have a third category of commodities that are excluded from the tariff phase out, because those have to be protected. Unfortunately, because of the fact that you have a lot of smallholder farmers, at the time, maybe it has changed because I have not followed it for a few years now. At the time, many African countries protected basically the agricultural commodities because of the nature of the constituency, because of smallholder farmers. They felt like if you open up the market, they'll be exposed to unfair competition, and because they'll be f- having I mean facing unfair competition, this may have some implication on some of the earning they may have. Maybe that has changed, but the bottom line is that AFCTA is one of the biggest free trade area in the planet. If we can phase out, open up the borders, phase out the stuff, it will allow food and different agricultural commodity to move across borders. One of the advantage of US, for example, you have 50 countries in US, I mean state. You can sit in your office and you can order something into another state, and then because the standard are the same, things can move freely from there to here. Um, uh, in Africa, for example, to move something, let's say from Togo to Benin, sometimes it can be a challenge because they have different standards. But now the regional economic communities are moving toward harmonizing of those standards and putting some SPSs there. So, and I think the FCTA will help a lot. Let me stop here, Wale, and hand you back the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Amaditu, for taking your time out early in the morning to attend to uh, this meeting. We know that this meeting is very important to you. You told me earlier that you woke up around 2 a.m. and we cannot thank you enough. To do that, I just want to call on one of the entities, that's in person of Joy. Uh, yes, I think I saw it earlier. Joy, will you give the vote of thanks on behalf of colleagues, please? Can you unmute yourself to hear a lady's voice? Sometimes ladies are very, very quiet. Yes, so Joy,
Good
would you like to
afternoon.
start? Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, sirs. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be in this fellowship, and I'm also very grateful for everything that you are organizing, sir. I'm speaking to Professor Olayide, sorry. And thank you very much, sir, Dr. Diop, for the wonderful presentation. It was very enlightening, it was very educating, and it was very impactful. I would love to have more of this. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time and your presence.
Thank you to you too, and to all. Wale, I think you are muted if you are talking.
Thank you very much. Can we take our family photo? Please turn on the videos. Let's take our family photos now as a memorial of this webinar. Okay, turn on the video here. Mine. Okay. Femi, if you're ready, just tell us you're ready. Okay. If you can afford to smile, do so. Yes, actually, can you really afford to smile? Yes, it's not expensive, right? Okay. Yes, Femi, let us know when you are ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
When you are done, actually. Okay. Okay, some I to turn on the video, but maybe as many people that can do that, no problem.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, so thank you very much. Again, so Amadigo, thank you very much.
Thank you,
I
everyone.
wish
Have a good
you
weekend.
a weekend to everybody.
It was a pleasure
Bye.
talking to you all. Bye.
Bye. We will share the presentation later too. So as received
No problem.
from my boss, we share. Thank you.